I'm Seema Rao, Deputy Director and Chief Experience Officer of the Akron Art Museum, and I'm joined by.
I'm Frank Oriti. I'm in Lakewood, Ohio.
So, Frank, we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we have in the show in a second, but I think a lot of people from the region probably know you largely as sort of somebody who does images of people. Would you call them portraits?
Very much so, yes.
How do you pick those people?
Originally, there was a specific theme I was working with, um, where I was painting people who were from the same part of town I was from, Parma, Ohio, um, who I grew up with and came from similar blue collar backgrounds, um, all of which, myself included, um, sort of left our hometown to go to college or join the military, and then for all, um, I guess, different circumstances, ended up back in the same neighborhoods that we attempted to leave. And that struck a chord with me when I was in graduate school at Ohio University, now a little over 10 years ago. And so I was working with that theme for maybe 7 or 8 years. And so, although the theme has kind of evolved over the years, I think it's become much more about the look, appearance, and attitude of the people that I paint. That original idea still has sort of um, roots in the things that I'm making.
So you said the phrase that I, as a child, always heard, but I don't always hear anymore. Blue collar. What does that mean to you?
Um, Working class sort of, and that's something that I also kind of discuss about my work, is that I think now, to me, working class means um like a not giving up sort of attitude,
Mhm.
um working until the job is done and done well. um and a lot of the people that I paint end up having, you know, two, sometimes three jobs, side hustles, whatever it takes to be able to spend time on their creative passion. A lot of the people that I've
Mhm.
painted um, are artists, musicians, barbers, bartenders, bakers, um, all of these things that require attention to detail, but also, um, an intense um, interest and passion for what they're making or creating.
I love I love that because so you're saying their work requires a lot of attention to detail. One thing I would say about your work is that it requires a lot of attention to detail. So do you
Mhm.
feel like that comes out of like just living with people who have work like that, or where did your attention to detail come from?
I think from a young age, I was really interested in trying to make drawings um, appear as lifelike as possible. I can remember seeing it was like an address or phone book that my mom had, and it was like a Norman Rockwell phone book. And so
Hmm.
his images were on the cover, and then you'd page through it, and every 5 or 10 pages there would be one of his paintings. And at a really young age, trying to wrap my head around the fact that these were actual paintings, it blew my mind. As well as, I grew up um, in a Catholic with a Catholic upbringing, so seeing um, images and books from the old masters, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and seeing a lot of those stories that we were learning
Mhm.
from going to church, seeing those stories illustrated, but done in these really dramatic and lifelike ways. It was, I, yeah, it was important for me to see those things at that age, and I think from then it became drawing out of magazines, and I was really into sports growing up, and so drawing all of my favorite athletes and comic books and things like that.
Sounds like you were voracious in terms of looking at imagery. So were you the kind of kid who was drawing all your life?
I think so, yeah. There's this funny story my mom told me a few years ago. She's like, "I knew when you were 3 or 4 years old that, you were gonna be, living some kind of creative life." And I didn't believe her. I was just like, "There's no way that you knew at that age." And then she sent me an image of a baby book, um, where, you list all of the things about this child, and it said, um, even at 3 or 4 years old, you know, Frankie loves painting and loves making things, and I was blown away by that,
That's
even at that
awesome. And
age.
now now
Yeah.
you do it, and I will say that you have a day job, so you do this, you have to fit it in. Mm. Do you
Um,
have a narrative that you expect people to have, or do you have a narrative when you're making a work?
um, Now I think it's a little different,
Hmm.
um, in regards to, I think, more personal stories are coming to the work that I'm making.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas before, the work belonged to a larger theme that I was kind of exist, and now I think it is sort of a painting by painting
Mhm.
scenario. Being in quarantine couple of years ago almost, which is strange to say, it forced a lot of us to me to consider place
Mm.
physically, but
Mhm.
um, I was thinking a lot about the work I was making and whether or not, there was a lot of important things going on in the world.
Mhm.
I didn't really think that work I was making spoke to that. And hey, I was okay with that, but felt like it needed to be something more.
Mm.
The work at that time, it just didn't feel right to make anymore. And um, I made this thing of all who passed the day on my way to work. And um, it made me think of how I was spending my time now in my small apartment
Mm.
or in my studio versus
Mhm.
I used to spend my time at before there was the internet phones and all of those things, running around and playing games and sports until the street lights came on. So um, I think in my work there is more of a uh, biographical element, more specific than um, some of the more vague topics that I was working with.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting, which is a good segue to, we always like to end these interviews with something positive. So what's next for you, or what's something exciting you want to tell us about?
Um, Great show happening. Um, I am probably going to forget everything that's going on. I don't know. I'm just, excited to be in the studio and having the opportunity to make things is always fun and to find new ways to be um, so
Well, we
making work.
will, you are good at sharing your work on Instagram, so we will link to it from
Cool.
this thing so everyone can follow you and see what you're up to next. Thank you very much for being here.
Very cool. Thank you so much.